Okay, Mr. Kazmarski, we started the meeting live for those that are participating remotely. We have participants logged in right now. Feel free to begin the meeting when you're ready.
Great, thank you so much. This meeting of the Mahwah Board of Education is open to members of the public to be physically present. Members of the public that attend will be asked to follow the same procedures as all other visitors to our schools. Those procedures can be found on the agenda page of our website. Additionally, the board meeting will be live streamed for viewing purposes only. Anyone wishing to view the meeting may do so via Zoom. The webinar ID for this meeting is 835-077-21837, and the required password is 368735. To allow for adequate distancing, the meeting location has been changed to the Mahwah High School Auditorium on 50 Ridge Road. Mr. Bleeker, please have a roll call.
Yes. Ms. Conoco.
Here.
Dr. Morthy. Dr. Park.
Here.
Ms. Saccone.
Here.
Mr. Copland.
Here.
Mr. De Silva.
Here.
Ms. Denise.
Here.
Mr. Gallo.
Here.
Mr. Kazmarski.
Here. Adequate notice of the agenda of this meeting is provided to the Ridgewood News and the Record, specifying that the Mahwah Board of Education will meet on April 21st, 2021 in the Mahwah High School Auditorium, 50 Ridge Road, Mahwah, New Jersey. A copy was filed with the Township Clerk. Please rise for a salute to the flag. Mr. De Silva, will you please lead us? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. At this time, I would like a motion to suspend the regular order of the meeting for the purposes of placing the closed session at the end of the meeting, so as not to leave the public waiting.
So moved.
A second on that?
Second.
Ms. Conoco? You have to roll call that?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Ms. Conoco.
Yes.
Dr. Morthy. Oh, Dr. Morthy is absent. Dr. Park.
Yes.
Ms. Saccone.
Yes.
Mr. Copland.
Yes.
Mr. De Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Denise.
Yes.
Mr. Gallo.
Yes.
And Mr. Kazmarski.
Yes. Okay, with that, we will move on to agenda questions. Please limit your questions at this time to resolutions under new business on this agenda. As a matter of fairness, you are asked to limit your questions to no more than one and your remarks to no longer than 3 minutes. If you are here representing a group, please identify yourself, the group, and your position in the group. If you are here as an individual, please give us your name and address. This section of the public participation will be limited to 15 minutes. Please specify the resolution you're referring to in your question. May I please have a motion to open the meeting to the public? Mr. Gallo, seconded by Mr. Denise. Okay. Anyone? All right, seeing none, may I please have a motion to close the meeting to the public? Ms. Conoco, seconded by Mr. Copland. All right, Interim Superintendent's report, Dr. Fitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to present this report. I'm also pleased to share this presentation with our board attorney tonight also. But let me just tell you a little bit about our schools. Our schools are adjusting extremely well and accommodating pupils, exceptional. It's a compliment that should go to the staff and all of the supporting people, the technology people, the cleaning people, the bus drivers, and everyone that's supporting this initiative to help us to be as successful as we are where we are. We're engaging in discussion as we hear from concerns from parents, such as, will there be additional snacks for children? We are holding that discussion now. We've heard you talk about having to rush to school because there's a limited amount of time between the closing of one school and the closing of others. But let me say to you, do not rush. Your children are well protected and they will be safe until you arrive. So you don't have to worry about them. We will take care of them. Let me just tell you about our health concerns. We are continuing to abide by all of the recommendations that are available to us from CDC. We are listening carefully to our school physician and our school nurses. And we are monitoring and looking at the best practices that have brought us to this point. So we're taking into full consideration as we forge ahead of adjusting our schedule and increasing enrollment in our schools.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Fitz. With that, we have a presentation from Board Attorney Mark Zittimer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wow, wrong mic. Members of the board, members of the administration, it's nice to see, and members of the community, of course, it's nice to see everybody in public. It's been a while, and hope to be back soon, and hopefully someday we won't be wearing masks anymore. But for the time being, we got to do what we got to do. So the administration and the board asked me to present tonight on the topic of New Jersey's harassment, intimidation, and bullying law. It's a statute that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and the board obviously is familiar with. But it's always a good idea from time to time to do some training and to refresh everybody's memory and maybe to talk about some new cases, which I will, that have come down. Okay, if I could figure out how to work this. Oh, which button am I pushing here? At the bottom. There we go. Okay. So New Jersey has what's been described as one of the toughest harassment, intimidation, and bullying laws in the country, actually. And why is it so tough? And the title of my presentation, as you saw before, is Get Tough on HIB. Well, first of all, we have a zero tolerance approach to HIB, and our legislature meant it. The purpose of the law is prevention, not reaction. The Department of Education wants to know, what are we doing to prevent HIB before it happens, not what are we doing in a reactive sense when confronted with cases. The goal is 0 cases. Now, obviously, it's not going to be possible, quite frankly, in a district, a K-12 district like this, to have 0 cases. But we want to have those cases as few as possible. And what are we doing in terms of training our staff, training the board, training the administration, and even training the students to make it clear to everybody here that we don't accept bullying in our schools. So prevention is always going to be much more difficult than reaction. It's always easy to react and handle it. What are you doing to stop it in the first place? And that's obviously much more challenging. The cases often involve multiple aggressors and multiple victims. These cases are complicated. For anybody in the administration who deals with these cases will attest to. It's not typically one bully and one victim. There's multiple victims, multiple bullies. Sometimes the victims become the bullies. Sometimes people come out of left field that you didn't expect to be involved in the case, and it just makes things very, very complicated. It's not always easy to identify when something is HIB, which would trigger an investigation in the first place. I remember when the statute was first enacted, and we have this convoluted definition of HIB, which we're going to talk about in a second. And the first week of school, my phone was ringing off the hook, and my clients were saying, "Oh my God, we had 50 HIB cases in the first week of school." And I was going, what is going on around here? And the reason was because the definition of HIB, as you'll see, is very, very complicated. And it took some time before people really understood what the HIB statute means and what it doesn't mean. Our HIB statute in New Jersey is almost akin to like an anti-discrimination statute in the sense that it's got to be based on a perceived, actual, or other distinguishing characteristic. So if Johnny throws a ham sandwich at another student in the cafeteria, and it's based solely on code of conduct, it's not necessarily going to be HIB unless it's based on a characteristic, which we'll talk about in a second. Not only do school officials have to worry about what's going on campus, but we always have to worry about what's going on off campus as well, because the HIB law does deal with off-campus conduct, as long as that conduct has a nexus back to the school district environment. And then lastly, again, I'm sure our administrators and the specialists and the coordinator can attest to the fact that a significant amount of administrative time and resources are monopolized by the law. And obviously, it's an important statute, so I am not minimizing this in any way, but it is a statute that takes a lot of time and effort and energy. I know it took a lot of time and energy on the board's part to come up with the very, very comprehensive HIB policy that we have. And it's codified in 5512. It's on our website. And it's 22 pages long, give or take, and I'm not going to obviously go through the whole thing, but I thought the preamble really sums it up very nicely, which is that the Board of Education, which developed the policy, prohibits, I wanted to underline that word, prohibits acts of harassment, intimidation, or bullying of a student. A safe and civil environment in school is necessary for students to learn and achieve high academic standards. HIB is conduct that disrupts both a student's ability to learn and a school's ability to educate its students in a safe and disciplined environment. And I think that sums it up really beautifully, because obviously if students are bullied when they come to school, they're not going to be able to learn, and our educators are not going to be able to educate them. So I wanted to break down the definition of HIB for you. And here's what our legislature has defined HIB to mean. And the parentheticals are things that I've added in this slide just to make it a little bit easier. The whats are not in the actual statute, just so we're clear, but I thought it was easy to break it down this way. So what is HIB? It could be any gesture, written, verbal, or physical act, or any electronic communication, often referred to as cyberbullying. How often? It could be a single incident or a series of incidents. It's got to be perceived as motivated by something. So it's got to be perceived, and we're talking about it from the perspective of the victim here. It's got to be perceived, reasonably perceived, as being motivated either by an actual or a perceived characteristic. An actual characteristic, a student's disabled, the student's in a wheelchair, that's an actual characteristic. A perceived characteristic, I perceive that another student's gay and I'm going to bully that student. Whether your perception is right, whether the student's perception is right, is not the important thing. If somebody's perceived to be a member of a protected class, for instance, they receive the protections of the statute. It's got to be based on a characteristic, and this is what I was referring to before, that our statute's almost akin to an anti-discrimination statute. It's got to be based on race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, or a mental, physical, or sensory disability, and then the catch-all here, or by any other distinguishing characteristic, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Where and when? It's got to take place on school property, at a school-sponsored function, or on a school bus, or off school grounds. We talked about the off-campus conduct. That does what? It's got to substantially disrupt, or interfere with the orderly operation of the school or the rights of other students. Quite frankly, I think the legislature should have ended the definition there. I think that's enough, but they keep going. And it's got to meet one of three additional criteria. So Section A looks at it from the perspective of the bully. That a reasonable person, and if you have the most sensitive person at one end of the spectrum and the most insensitive person at the other end of the spectrum, you think about the reasonable person as kind of the person in the middle. So a reasonable person should know, under the circumstances, will have the effect of physically or emotionally harming a student, or damaging the student's property, or placing a student in reasonable, there's the word reasonable again, reasonable fear of physical or emotional harm to his person or damage to his property, or, this looks at it from the perspective of the victim, has the effect of insulting or demeaning any student or group of students, or lastly, creates a hostile educational environment for the student by interfering with the student's education, or by severely or pervasively causing physical or emotional harm to the student. Okay, not an easy definition, and you wonder why there were so many cases, because people looked at this and nobody really understood what it meant. I think the way I've broken it down a little bit, and I sometimes pull out this PowerPoint because I think the way I broke it down makes it a little easier to process. So every year, the Department of Education publishes its statistics. We, as part of our violence and vandalism report, have to report to the state of New Jersey, as does every school district, the bullying cases, the violence and vandalism cases. The current statistics are not out yet. I have a feeling because of COVID, the numbers are going to be way down. But here are the 18-19 statistics from the Department of Education. Now, this is statewide. Don't get worried. This is Mahwah. This is statewide, okay? There were 16,952 investigations. We talked before about the amount of administrative time. Think about that statewide. 16,952 investigations. Think about how many hours went into that, into reported HIB offenses. In the prior year, it was 18,471, and the numbers pretty much trend in the same area. There were 7,183 confirmed cases, so 42% of the cases were actually confirmed. This doesn't surprise a lot of folks who are in the world of education, but that students in grades 5 through 8 were responsible for the majority of the HIB offenses. So middle school students are the biggest, I'll call it perpetrators. HIB effect, we talked about those additional 3 criteria. So this surprised me a little bit, but here are the criteria, and the percentages add up to 100 for all those math people out there, because there's overlap between the various categories. But insulted or demeaned students represented 82%. Offender knew would cause harm was 51%. Hostile environment causing harm, 45%. Interfered with education, 41%. Victim in fear, 31%. What were the types of HIB endured? Gesture, 561. Written, 4,141. Verbal, about 5,800. Physical, 1,400. Electronic communication, 1,200. I was surprised, quite frankly, by this slide. I thought the electronic communication was going to be a much higher number, quite honestly, but it was actually the verbal HIB was the most number of cases. Why were students targeted? And I put in parentheses there what it was the prior year, just for comparison. Again, this slide surprised me a little bit too. Race and color, 1,100 cases. Religion, 170. Ancestry, about 259. Sexual orientation, 859. Gender, 1,000-ish. Sexual orientation, 859. Mental, physical, or sensory disability, or other distinguishing characteristic. The catch-all that I mentioned before made up the bulk of the cases. So what do we mean by other distinguishing characteristic? I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. 80% were on school grounds. Again, this surprised me a little bit too. 11% were off school grounds, and 9% were both on school and off school grounds. Again, I thought the off school grounds number was going to be much higher because of a lot of things that I'm seeing these days with social media and Snapchat and all these platforms that students are using. So how do we know what a distinguishing characteristic is? Let's talk about some cases. And you'll see that pretty much everything and anything can be an other distinguishing characteristic, which is why there are so many cases in this category. So a case involving the Montgomery Board of Education, comments made by one 6th grade student to another included, "Vegetarians are stupid. It's not good to eat meat. Eating meat gives you a smarter and bigger brain." Commissioner of Education and the board in this particular case held that making fun of somebody because that person is a vegetarian, being a vegetarian could be considered another distinguishing characteristic. Jefferson Board of Education, comments that a student, excuse my language, sucked in basketball, was short, would not go to college. This constituted HIB. It fell within the definition of basically athletic ability. They found that making fun of somebody because of poor athletic ability was a distinguishing characteristic. How about this one with Tenafly? A single comment which was true by a student that the target student had dyed her hair because she had head lice. Having head lice was considered to be a distinguishing characteristic. In my favorite case from the Mansfield Board of Ed, a student told another student that his haircut made him look like Donald Trump. So having a Donald Trump haircut was found to be another distinguishing characteristic, believe it or not. The bottom line is I've seen cases that students are made fun of because they have freckles, red hair, big ears. Pretty much anything and everything can be another distinguishing characteristic. But the bottom line is it's got to be based on an actual perceived or other distinguishing characteristic in order for it to satisfy the definition of HIB. If it's not based on one of those things, then it's probably going to fall into the world of code of conduct that's going to be dealt with disciplinarily in a disciplinary way. One of the questions I often get is HIB also criminal? And the answer is it may be. New Jersey's HIB law does not criminalize HIB, but certain HIB conduct may be criminal under New Jersey law. Examples: bias, intimidation, hazing, harassment, including cyber harassment, assaults, threats, sexual offenses. And I always tell clients that if you're confronted with an HIB case where there's some question, some doubt perhaps about whether it's whether it's criminal or not, we must report it to law enforcement. And school personnel don't have to report HIB investigations unless the conduct also potentially constitutes a criminal offense. And the law says that if both law enforcement and school officials are investigating the same conduct, we have to suspend our HIB investigations if law enforcement asks us to do so. And they typically do. They don't want us doing our own investigation of something that they believe is criminal and that they're doing their investigation. Usually they'll tell us to hold off. When they're done, we then continue with our investigation. So New Jersey's HIB statute has some very, very stringent timelines. When the law came about, one of the complaints that people had originally was before the law was that some of these cases were just taking way too long, months and months and months to investigate and come to a conclusion. So now you'll see there's a very, very stringent timeline. So the law says that anyone, board member, employee, vendor, anybody who's witnessed or has reliable information that a student has been subject to HIB must report the incident to the anti-bullying specialist, any school administrator or safe school resource officer who shall immediately, see those words, immediately initiate the school's procedures concerning bullying. The investigation shall be initiated by the principal or the principal's designee within 1 school day of the report of the incident, and it's going to be conducted by our school district's anti-bullying specialists. It has to be completed as soon as possible, but not later than 10 school days. 10 school days, that's a very short window of time, especially in some of the cases which are more complicated, but it's got to be done within 10 school days from the date of the written report of the incident. What the law says is that if the investigation isn't complete or you're expecting additional information, we could always amend our report later. The results of the investigation get reported to the superintendent within 2 school days of the completion of the investigation. And then the law says the superintendent has the ability to provide intervention services, training, discipline, counseling, or take other appropriate action while this matter is ongoing. Board of Education. The results then get reported to the Board of Education no later than the board meeting which follows the completion of the investigation. And this board obviously gets these reports, along with information about services provided, training established, or discipline imposed, or any other action taken by the superintendent. Now, this may confuse some people sometimes. I see sometimes this happens in reverse, where the parents get the report before the board. The board is actually supposed to get it before the parents. It then gets reported to the parents within 5 days after the results are reported to the board, and the parents or guardians of the students who are parties to the investigation get certain information. What do they get? They get to know the nature of the investigation, what it involved, whether we found evidence of HIB, whether discipline was imposed, and the services provided to address the incident of HIB. Do they get to know that the bully who bullied their child got a 5-day suspension? No, they don't get to know the specifics. All they have a right to know is that we found it as a HIB and that we took appropriate action. We don't share the confidentiality of other students' records. If a parent is dissatisfied with the disposition of the case, they can request a hearing before the Board of Education. That hearing has to be held within 10 days of the parent's request. Now, one of the things that was changed about the HIB law about a year ago is they did put that a school district has the ability to set a timeline by which the parent requests to have that hearing. So it's got to be requested within 60 days after the parent receives information. I remember a few years ago, we had parents appealing things in May for events that happened back in September of the prior year, and it was very hard to deal with. Memories fade. So now if a parent is dissatisfied, they have to make the request within 60 days, and then the board has to schedule the hearing within 10 days. Sometimes if it doesn't fall within the meeting schedule of the board, we have to have a special meeting, or sometimes there's nothing wrong with asking the parent, are you okay waiting a few more days because the way the meeting schedule fall? Most parents are pretty accommodating with that sort of thing. After the board hears the appeal, at the next meeting following its receipt of the report, the board has to issue a decision, an actual decision, either in writing to affirm, reject, or modify the superintendent's decision. We send a letter to the family telling them what our decision was, why we reached that conclusion, and the fact that the board's decision can then be appealed to the Commissioner of Education. And there's a 90-day statute of limitation by which the parent has to then go to the commissioner. Annually, 2 times a year, the board is supposed to report out to the public, as we always do, between September and January through June, all our acts of violence, vandalism, and HIB, which occurred during the prior reporting period. And those are the reports that generated the statistics that I talked about before. If you go to Mahwah School District's website, you'll see a link to our HIB policy, and you'll see that each of our schools gets graded. We have to grade our schools. Don't get nervous when you see that some of our schools had a score of 77 or 76, because you have to remember the best score, and our scores are excellent in Mahwah, the top score is a 78. The law says that our website, which ours does, has to have our policy, our 22 or so page policy, the grade for each school, a link to the HIB report, and the names and contact information for the district specialists and the anti-bullying coordinator, who is Miss Rizzo, where she is sitting attentively in the third row. So let's talk about some new case law. So this was a case that came out of Verona this past year, where the Commissioner of Education held that one, the bully I'll call it, can unintentionally commit an act of HIB because the focus is on whether the victim reasonably perceives, remember going back to one of my earlier slides, did the victim reasonably perceive that the action was motivated by a desire to do harm? So in this particular case, it was a case actually filed against a teacher by a student. And the law does apply, by the way, to staff to student conduct, not only to student conduct, but staff to student conduct as well. It does not apply staff to staff. But in this particular case, a teacher said to her class that she felt that they were not ready to be in AP the following year. She felt that it was a very challenging class, and based on the students' ability, she was pretty frank with them and said, I don't think you guys are ready to be in AP classes. And a student filed an HIB a case against her, saying that it was based on her perceived mental abilities. And the Commissioner of Education held that even though the teacher didn't mean to commit an HIB offense, the fact that the student perceived it as a knock on her intelligence, that was enough to create an HIB case. We have an interesting case that came out of the Jefferson Board of Education in Morris County that went up to the appellate court, which is the court higher, right below the Supreme Court, actually. It's a pretty high court in the state of New Jersey. So in this case, a 5th grade student called another student the N-word as part of inappropriate banter, both online and on the school bus. The HIB specialist concluded that it was conflict among a group of 5th grade students. They were all engaging in this horrible banter back and forth. They were all teasing each other. They were insulting each other. It was a lot of back and forth. Even though the conduct upset the victim, it did not substantially, and remember these words that I went back to before, it did not substantially disrupt or interfere with the student's rights or academic program. And the court agreed that it was not HIB in this case. And this was an interesting quote. The court said that if we were to adopt petitioner, meaning the parent in this case, adopt the petitioner's position that the single use of a racial slur is an automatic or a per se violation of the act, the court would effectively legislate and give new meaning to the plain language of the act. So in other words, and I've seen a lot of cases like this, where another student will call another student an improper religious name or an ethnic slur or some name based on sexual orientation. And I think sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is to say, yep, that's HIB because it was based on a characteristic. But you still have to apply the other criteria of the statute. Did it substantially disrupt or interfere with the student's rights? In this particular case, they did not. And the court was very clear that it just using it, and not minimizing it, by the way, it could certainly be code of conduct, but simply using a racial epithet or a religious epithet or any other type of epithet does not end the inquiry. You still have to see if it meets the other criteria of the statute. The other thing I thought was good about this case, actually, was that the commissioner did reiterate, and the appellate court did reiterate, that the Board of Education's decisions in these cases is entitled to deference. So unless somebody can show that your decision essentially was arbitrary, without a rational basis, or induced by improper motives, generally, the commissioner and the appellate courts are going to affirm any challenges of your decisions as board members in these cases. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Brett.
The criminal aspect.
Yeah.
What does the policy say or the rules say about sharing of information between the police department and the school?
It's a great question. I'll repeat that for everybody. What does the policy say about the sharing of information between law enforcement and school officials on these cases? So Every year, as you know, the Board of Education adopts the Uniform Memorandum of Agreement between education and law enforcement. And that document really controls, and what it says is that school officials are required to share any potential criminal information with law enforcement. And similarly, law enforcement is supposed to share with school officials any criminal information involving our students. So it's supposed to be a two-way sharing of information. So there's collaboration so that we're not stepping on their toes and they're not stepping on our toes. So there is supposed to be that sharing of information. It's very important. And that's why we have to adopt this memorandum of agreement, which every year is getting thicker and thicker. I think it's up to like 100 pages at this point. And they adopt that the Attorney General's office does update that from time to time as well. Sure. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we got Mr. Bleeker.
Thank you, everybody. This evening, I am going to be doing a budget presentation for the 21-22 school year budget. For those that have been following along, this is the third presentation. We have one more at our next meeting scheduled for May 5th. That's going to be our budget hearing when we adopt the formal budget for the 21-22 school year. Tonight, the areas I'm going to cover and speak to are benefits, personnel, and operations in the district scheduled for 21-22. Employee benefits. Employee benefits is a wide category that covers medical benefits, health, prescription, dental, workers' comp, social security, pension payments that the board makes on behalf of those that are in the PERS pension system, tuition reimbursements, and any payment for accumulated sick time. For the 21-20 school year, the employee benefits represents approximately 15.1% of the total budget for next year, or just over $11 million. For health benefits, as a reminder, we participate in the state health benefits plan for our staff. For dental, we have Delta Dental and Benecard prescription for our staff for prescription benefits. Staffing for next year. The budget and allocation for staffing is $37,885,000. Represents just over half of the total budget for next year, and 498 staff are represented in that. The staff covers several bargaining units. We have 3 bargaining units that associations that are within the district. That's the MEA, Mahwah Education Association, which covers all teaching staff, secretaries, bus drivers, maintenance staff, and nurses. We have the Mahwah Administrators Association, which has all principals, assistant principals, and the director of guidance. And Mahwah Supervisor Association, which covers all supervisors for the district. The last group that is combined in the total for salaries for next year are any independent staff and paraprofessionals that are not part of a collective bargaining unit. Each year, staffing is thoroughly examined and budgeted to address the educational, curricular, and enrollment needs of the district, as well as all instructional and support areas. For the 21-22 year, compared with the current 20-21 year, we're expecting a net decrease of 3 positions for next year. Operations, there's a couple different categories that make up operations. We have instructional support, curriculum, guidance, multimedia, and professional development. Represents a little bit over $8,900,000. School operations, these are the operations for our 6 individual schools, is $2.6 million, just under 2.7. For district operations and technology, that's central office and technology department, just under $3 million at $2.9 million. Maintenance, custodial, grounds, and security is just over $7 million, representing 9.6% of the total budget for next year. Transportation, $4.7 million, or 6.5% of the budget. And extracurricular and athletics, approximately $1.363 million of the budget for next year. As I said before, this is my third presentation of the budget for the 21-22 school year. There will be one more presentation at our next board meeting where we adopt the final budget. We've discussed over the last couple of meetings the preliminary budget, revenue and tax impact, debt service, special revenue, and again, tonight, benefits, personnel, and operations. At our next meeting, I'll be doing a summary of the past 3 presentations, as well as having on the agenda the formal resolution to adopt the 21-22 school year budget. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Fair.
Good evening. My report is made up of three parts. So the first piece is connected to three retirements that are found on the agenda, items 18A, B, and C. The second piece of my report this evening will be our district's Phase 2 reflections, as well as our Phase 3 considerations. And then our third piece will be our recommendations for 2 appointments, 2 additions to our leadership team to the Board of Ed. So our first retirement is Mrs. Beth Marin. She's currently a school counselor at Rampo Ridge Middle School. Mrs. Marin has served the Mahwah Township Public Schools in the capacity of teacher of special ed at Mahwah High School and as school counselor for grades 6 through 8 at Rampo Ridge for the past 9 years. Mrs. Marin's care and compassion for our students is second to none. She has consistently served as a dedicated advocate for her students' academic, social, and emotional well-being, while simultaneously teaching them honesty, integrity, and responsibility at every opportunity. Mrs. Marin has been a respected mentor and coach to several of her counseling and teaching staff members as well, providing countless hours of guidance relative to their work with students. Mrs. Marin's practical approach to all aspects of our instructional program and her work with our students has been immeasurable value to all of the administrators with whom she has worked during her time at Rampo Ridge. And while she will be greatly missed, we wish her all the best in her much-deserved retirement. Our second retirement is also from Rampo Ridge Middle School. Mrs. Sue Kratchman has reliably served the Mahwah schools for the past almost 31 years in the Library Media Center at Rampo Ridge Middle School. Though her job title read library clerk, her service has shown her to be like having a second librarian. She knows and loves children's books so much that she could easily recommend titles, series, and authors, which kept our students reading and coming back for more. Her management of the library collection has been impeccable and is always ready to help out a colleague with finding resources, books, and audio-visual equipment. Her warm personality and arsenal of stories have made our middle school library a welcoming place for students and staff alike, and we all wish her well in her retirement. Lastly, the main office secretary, Debbie DeSocio from Rampo Ridge Middle School, is also announcing her retirement. She has dutifully served as the secretary to the principal of Rampo Ridge Middle School for the past 26 years. In this capacity, Mrs. DeSocio has consistently proven herself to be a committed, diligent, and detail-oriented administrative professional. Mrs. DeSocio has gone above and beyond on a daily basis to ensure that our teachers, staff members, students, and administrators are well informed and have all of the resources that they need for success in teaching and learning. Her friendly demeanor, conscientiousness, and overall concern for the smooth functioning of the school building has made a world of difference for so many years. Mrs. DeSocio has been the go-to person at Rampo Ridge for so long. That's very true. And she has certainly made her mark on our collective school community. The faculty, staff, and administration of Rampo Ridge wish Mrs. DeSocio retirement full of rest, relaxation, fun, and laughter with her cherished family, especially her 6 grandchildren. So those are our retirement announcements for this evening. The second piece is our presentation related to Phase 2 and Phase 3. So we're at a place where we've transitioned to Phase 2. We just recently had a parent advisory council meeting yesterday with a variety of our parents. And it was really great to have some honest back and forth. It was a great conversation, and I'm glad we've been able to continue to foster that relationship over the course of this past year. So this past week, we sent out a notice to our community that included a link for Thought Exchange. And Thought Exchange is a software that we're piloting, which is essentially social listening. It allows for our community members to share their honest and respectful comments related to what Phase 2 looks like and what we need to consider moving forward into Phase 3, since we're looking to make Phase 3 a reality this school year. And what is very clear, what the software does is it reviews all of the commentary, and it essentially finds key themes that emerge. And what is obvious is our community is very much split, which was also reflective in our conversation yesterday with our Parent Advisory Council. We have parents and families who feel that everything right now is going okay, and they don't want too many changes. We also have another part of our community who want us to be in more, and also there have been lengthy conversations through Thought Exchange and with parents about snack and the potential for lunch in a phase 3. So phase 2, what's been great about phase 2, it's included more on-site learning. So it's been an opportunity for more of our remote learners to join our classes in school, which has been great. We've instituted snack at the elementary school level. We recognize that there have been comments related to the amount of time related to snack that we're talking about currently at the elementary school level. And we are currently considering reasonable opportunities for snack at the secondary level as we currently exist in phase 2. So our long-term plans, before we talk more about what phase 3 could potentially look like, is we believe it is important to keep some of our typical end-of-year experiences for students, especially because the last year and a half has really thrown our students and community a little off kilter. So we want it to be inclusive of inviting our full remote students on site to experience these awesome rites of passage with our on-site learners. That is inclusive of moving up ceremonies, bridge year students, where we have our 3rd grades doing building visits of Joyce Kilmer School, our 5th graders moving into 6th grade, visiting Rampo Ridge Middle School, and including the full remote students in that process. And we've heard from full remote parents that it would be really nice for their full remote students to actually meet their students in person. So it's something that we've been talking about, and we're looking forward to doing at the close of the school year.
So as Dennis shared, we're in phase 2. Phase 1 and phase 2, thankfully, have been very successful. It took a lot of planning and effort, and all that planning and effort really turned out the way we wanted to. That being said, because we've been so successful, we're already planning for phase 3. Phase 3 is, as we all can admit, being in school full day on site from bell to bell is the most optimal way. Can you go back?
Sorry.
Is that most optimal way for us to educate our children. That being said, there's a lot of planning that goes into that. That planning has already started. We are looking at possible schedule adjustments. And I know Kyle's not happy with us. We're asking transportation to take a look at our transportation contracts yet again. We have already engaged our food services. We are conducting site visits at surrounding districts that have already engaged in the schedule. We want to see it in action. We want to take notes, see what's working, see what's not, and make sure that we're creating a plan that's safe for both our students and our staff. We have a great support system at Hackensack Meridian. We've already engaged them to come into phase 2. They were very complimentary of the supports that we put in place. The additional supports for phase 2, we will do the same as we walk into phase 3. And also something that we found to be very valuable is us engaging a number of the stakeholders, whether it's the teachers, whether it's the community, whether it's our health specialists, both locally and at the state level. We want to make sure that everything that we do, we're doing it right. Obviously, we do not want our fully remote to feel like they're ever forgotten. If we do go to when we go to phase 3, we will make sure that that instructional program is supported and the things are put in place there so they have an optimal experience as well. As we continue to look at instructional programs, not only during our school year, but following, we are in the tentative planning stages. And I say tentative, and I want people to understand There's a lot that needs to go into this, but we wanted to share this with the community because we know people are already starting to plan, if they haven't already, their summer experiences. That being said, there are 3 programs up there that we are hopeful to roll out depending on funding and facilities use. So it's still tentative. The booster program is it was the former traditional summer school. We're changing the name to it for a number of reasons. Number one, the term summer school sounds very punitive. The term summer school is something that oftentimes puts students off. And we want to welcome our students who need that foundational support. We're looking at the curriculum and the way in which it's delivered, and we want to make it look different than what they get on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, it's something that they're struggling with in school. We need to do something different to make sure that we're supporting them. So that booster program is already an existing program that we have in place. That will definitely run this year, and that we're changing kind of the makeup of it. The next 2 are new programs. The boot camp program would, if it does run, would be open to all. And that is something that we are looking at, creating this program to identify big themes at our K-5 level, both in ELA and math. The middle school is working on a program as well, that students can take part in getting a refresher of these are the major themes and concepts that you covered this year. If you need to strengthen your proficiency, you can take this 2-week course. We're looking at running 2-week sessions of our academic boot camp. The enrichment, which we're really excited about, but there's a lot of back-end work, so we're working through that right now. The enrichment is we've engaged to get some information from a local company. The local company has worked with a number of different districts, and it's a STEM-based enrichment experience. It's a 1-week enrichment experience. As you can tell by the dates, the last thing we want is for the students who are taking part in the booster experience or boot camp to not be able to take part in the enrichment experience. So we're trying to do our best to be strategic with our schedule so everybody can experience what they would like to experience, while simultaneously making sure that we're preparing the schools to welcome the students for September. That enrichment experience, like I said, is a STEM-based experience. It's a K-6 experience, and it's something that they come in, they provide us with support and curriculum, but our own teachers run that program. So that was an exciting piece of information when we felt like we were going to engage an outside organization, but our own teachers were going to present this information to our students. So we're excited about that. All of these programs are going to be on site. We are not planning on virtual programming for this summer.
And just as a side note to our board members, on tonight's agenda on 18Z, we have a modification for the job description for the individual who is leading this program. Because this is still tentative, all of these programs, once we finalize the programming, this job description may be further adjusted, which will be on perhaps the May 5th board agenda.
As I said with phase 3, that's something that we would like to get into practice prior to the end of this year, at the very least in a pilot experience, if not in more extended experience, if we can make sure that we are planning accordingly. That being said, the purpose of us doing it this year is to ensure that come September, our expectation is that we're going to be coming back full day. Obviously, all of that is really guided by the state and local health officials. But that being said, we are planning for full day programming starting first day in September. And obviously that's inclusive of lunch for all of our students. And the bottom icon, the bottom bullet is important for me to share. There, at the meeting yesterday, there were questions about, are we going to be offering fully remote next year? That is something that is dictated by state guidance. Obviously, this year, as we all know, in the beginning of the summer, there were no remote options. Then in the middle of the summer, that did change. And obviously, we created that remote academy experience. That being said, the state is going to tell us what programs that we have to run, and we obviously will create the programs that we're obligated to create.
And as we create programs, obviously, we will share that information with the board and the public. And again, this is just another plug for our reentry website. It's updated frequently, has our COVID case information updated daily, and every communication that goes out to the district regarding any changes in program, any information related to phase 2 transitioning to phase 3 will also be posted under the communications tab on that website. This presentation will also be posted online for the community to access.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let me just close by sharing our recommendations for our for 2 new members of our administrative team who happen to be here in person side by side. So our first is agenda item 18G, who we are recommending to the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Linda Bovino. We had approximately 35 applicants who applied for the position. These applicants were from a range of backgrounds with various educational experience. 6 candidates were interviewed, with 3 candidates returning for a second interview. This interview included the preparation and execution of a presentation. After a competitive process, we recommend Dr. Linda Bovino for the position of Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Educationally, Dr. Bovino earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication and Media Studies / Elementary Education from Fordham University, along with a master's degree from Fordham University in Curriculum and Teaching with a focus on special education, as well as a master's from Fairleigh Dickinson University in Educational Leadership. Ultimately, Dr. Bovino earned her doctoral degree in Language, Literacy, and Learning from Fordham University. In her presentation in our final round of interviews, Dr. Bovino prepared and introduced the Thunderbird Learning Partnership Program, a community connections program for our middle schoolers. In making the decision for this particular position, Dr. Bovino showcased poise in her leadership, calm in her responses to very difficult questions, and expertise in the area of curriculum and instruction. Dr. Bovino presented with authentic enthusiasm at the prospect of this upcoming challenge. Dr. Bovino's work as an assistant principal at Joyce Comer School and as a principal at Betsy Ross School, she has demonstrated a strong work ethic and instructional intellect as a leader in our district. We are excited to see how Dr. Bovino can assist the central office team in our work moving forward. And our second administrator that we are recommending for this evening for our Supervisor of Special Education position, pre-K through 5, is Ms. Dawn Savastano. Approximately 60 applicants submitted an application for this position. 10 candidates were invited for a first round of interviews. Of these 10 candidates, 3 were recommended for a second round of interviews. The second interview included the preparation and execution of a presentation, and after a competitive process, we recommend Dawn Savastano to the position of Supervisor of Special Education pre-K through 5. Educationally, Mrs. Savastano has earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Psychology from the University of Hartford, her Master's degree in School Psychology from Mercy College, and her administrative certifications through the NJXL programs. In her presentation in our final round of interviews, Mrs. Savastano spoke thoroughly regarding an integrated service delivery model approach for related services. Throughout the interview process, Mrs. Savastano exhibits skill, knowledge, and passion regarding special education. Her understanding of our current program and her showcasing of leadership in supporting the program to make improvements and support cohesion across our elementary instructional program were both very, very obvious. Through the interview process, Mrs. Savastano proved her wealth of knowledge as it pertains to special education teaching, the classroom setting, and student learning. We are proud to recommend Dawn Savastano, who is our current school psychologist, to this role. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay. Yes. Question?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Mr. Copeland, question.
Dr. DeToro or Mr. Fair, regarding phase 3, if we live in a perfect world and all stars align, what's the timeline? When do we roll out phase 3? I'm not going to hold you to it because I know you don't like timelines, which I appreciate. But are we at a point where we could say, hey, it's going to be around this time if everything aligns? And are there any benchmarks that we're looking for to say, hey, we've hit this, let's start phase 3?
You can start and I'll add on.
Prima's not here, so I figured I'd put you on the spot.
Yeah, well,
Go
thank you.
ahead.
Thank you for that. Along the lines of the dates, I don't have a date, to be quite honest with you. We just start, obviously, since we just opened up phase 2, we just started on phase 3. I don't want to sit here and give you a date and not hit the date. What I can tell you is I would like to, for phase 3, have something in place prior to the end of the year. I know that's not the dates that you're looking for, but as I said, there's a lot of back end work that we're working on simultaneously right now that I don't want to give you something that we're going to either fail on or whatever it may be. So what I can tell you is all the different aspects of the planning process are moving forward. I think the priority right now is to get into other school districts, which we already engaged. We're already engaging them, whether it's the Glen Rocks or the Paramus or the Wayne or Becton Regional High School. Like those are the different schools that we're trying to engage with so we can get into a number of different districts. Obviously, a lot of them are secondary specific, but most recently Paramus and Wayne had that elementary model. So we're going to be going into them, into their districts and taking a look. I'm hopeful that maybe by the next board meeting, I'll have something more tangible for us to really lean on. But as of right now, I don't have a date.
Thank you.
So I believe those site visits are obviously going to inform our decision making, but we're also meeting with some of our teachers to continue the brainstorming. And we're looking at, as we shared in our presentation, a variety of scheduling work that has to be done, as well as we're talking to Pomptonian Food Services who've delivered lunches in other districts. So the work is being done, but yeah, it's hard to set a date, especially when not all of the thinking has been completed.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? So far. All right. Well, thank you very much for all that. President's report. First off, I would like to just publicly thank the members of the Parent Advisory Committee. I know my wife is one of them, but I did hear about many of the meetings you've had. I know they're very fruitful, and not everyone agrees, and it definitely gives you guys a lot of advice and sound from a sounding board perspective. A few announcements. Tickets are now on sale for the Mahwah High School Spring Musical production of Annie. That will be streamed online. You can get tickets to the streaming event for April 30th and May 1st, I believe on the high school website.
Mm-hmm.
Very important to support our theater students and anyone who works in this area, from the lighting booth, the sound, stage. It's a great place to be. I speak from experience. Very excited to see that spring sports have begun. Great to see our amazing Thunderbirds back out there. If you are attending any events, we ask that you please follow the posted COVID attendance guidelines. They are state and local guidelines for attending sporting events. But a definite congrats to the girls softball team for their hitting clinic the other night of 18-3 over DePaul. That was insane, and we got a rainbow out of it, so that was great. And lastly, with regards to one of the other big topics in town, the traffic signal outside of Mahwah High School. I attended a meeting last Friday in my capacity as the business administrator, but I guess I'm always the school board president wherever I go. With myself, Mr. Bleeker, Lieutenant Shervin, Mike Kelly, the township engineer, and one of his associates who does traffic. I don't know if he was out here yet this week. If not, he will be. The gentleman will be sitting basically out there counting cars and checking out directionals. The idea is to try to find I guess a better timing signal with regards to that light at different times of the day. There seems to be a specific, 7-minute time period in the morning where it just goes bananas. And if you sat in it, you know what I mean. So we're trying to alleviate that, as well as the after hours if it's really required other than just a blinking light. So he's doing that analysis this week. I hope in the next week or two we'll have an answer and hopefully a solution that works for everyone. And that's my report. Thank you. Board committee reports. Mike, I don't know if you had something for instructional or not. Okay, understood. Perfect, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, I'm sure Brett. Oh, yeah. Mr. Denise.
The policy committee has 4 policies on tonight's agenda for a first reading. First one is policy 4125, employment of support staff members. Had minor language changes that replaced reference to the New Child Left Behind Act with the Every Student Succeeds Act. The next policy is policy 6360, political contributions. This policy had a minor language change that included that a political contribution disclosure form is required for contracts of any Every Student Succeeds Act program. Next one is policy 8330, student records. This policy had minor language changes to be consistent with the Every Student Succeeds Act. And the last one is policy 9713, recruitment by special interest groups. This policy has been revised to include the requirement that a minor student may only opt out of their information being disclosed with parent consent, and that the school district must annually notify parents of the opt-out provision.
Great, thank you. Mr. Copeland.
Okay, community corner time. Couple things. Today is Administrative Professionals Day, so thank you to all of our administrative support staff that keep our buildings moving on every day. Also today, Hindus around the world are celebrating Ram Navami. It's an important Hindu festival honoring the birth of Lord Rama. So happy Ram Navami to all that celebrate. Today in the rain, the MSF hosted a car parade. So hopefully, I don't know how many people were there, but it was to celebrate the schools, teachers, and staff. So thank you to the MSF, the fire department, the police department, and all the families that participated. I know our staff greatly appreciated it. We are in the middle of National Volunteer Week. One of my favorite quotes is, volunteers don't necessarily have the time, they have the heart. Our community is better because of all the residents that step up and volunteer each day, so thank you all. Tomorrow is Earth Day. It was celebrated on April 22nd, 1970 for the first time. So go out tomorrow and every day and do something positive for Mother Nature. This past Monday, our district was featured on Channel 4. Dr. Toro and Mr. Pascal was interviewed and discussed the endorsement that we received from the Making America Safe program. I'm sure you could probably find that segment on their website if you didn't see it live or recorded. The Mahwah Museum is hosting a webinar on the history of the Palisades Amusement Park this Saturday at 11 a.m. The MSF is hosting a Chalk the Walk this Sunday. Draw or write positive messages at any of our schools to show your appreciation for our schools and staff. And don't forget, it's a BYOC event. Bring your own chalk. Bergen County Utilities Authority is hosting a tire recycling, mobile paper shredding, and electronics computer collection at Bergen Community College on Sunday from 9 to 2. And last but not least, today is National Kindergarten Day. I didn't realize there was a day for it, but there is. Celebrated every year on April 21st to honor the birthday of the German educator Frederick Frobel. I'm sure I butchered that last name, who founded the first play and activity institute called Kindergarten in 1837. Thank you to all our kindergarten teachers that do so much for our youngest students every single day. That's all I got. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Very informative. Very good. Anyone else? Mr. Gallo.
I have some brief remarks on behalf of negotiations. We met shortly before this meeting with the leaders of the Mahwah Supervisors Association, and I anticipate that we will have a successful conclusion to a follow-on agreement with the supervisors very shortly. And I just want to thank Roger Pelletier, Daniel Paulway, and Nikki Van Ness for making it such a pleasurable and constructive discussion as we work to renew the contract with these phenomenal employees.
Great, thank you very much. Number 15, board member remarks, additional comments or other? Mr. Copeland.
I'm on fire tonight. Just want to make a quick statement or observation of what I've been observing lately in our community. We're navigating through phase 2 right now and looking forward to phase 3. But to do so, we need to keep in mind our interactions with each other, especially with our staff and our other community members. Hostile debate, dismissing different points of view, personal attacks have no place in this discussion. I've seen it all too much over the past couple of weeks. We need to continue voicing our concerns. We need to continue sharing information and our expertise, but it must be done in a constructive and respectful manner. I'm going to say it again, personal attacks on staff members are out of line and inappropriate. Our entire staff are doing their best. We may not agree with some of the decisions and policies, but that doesn't give us the license to attack the integrity and morals of our staff. Brian Corey coined the theme of "We Are One" for the Ridge this year. I think it's very appropriate to use that theme for our entire community. We're all in this together and want the same thing, to get our kids back in the building full time. And it's unbelievably important that we continue to work together to achieve this goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Ms. Gallo?
I feel like sometimes we don't say it enough to thank all the folks, the staff, the administrators, the supervisors who've worked so diligently this year to get us through phase 1, to successfully launch phase 2, and for all the hard work that they're doing in phase 3. I just want to express my gratitude for all your work and for the obvious success it has had with our students and our staff in being able to conduct school in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. It's a remarkable achievement, and it deserves our gratitude.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 16, old business. Minutes. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of the March 31st meeting? Mr. Gallo, seconded by Ms. Conoco. Mr. Lee.
Okay, roll call on 16A, the minutes from, on the agenda. Ms. Conoco.
Yes.
Dr. Park.
Yes.
Ms. Saccone.
Yes.
Mr. Copland.
Yes.
Mr. De Silva.
Abstain.
Mr. Denise.
Yes.
Mr. Gallo.
Yes.
And Mr. Kazmarski.
Yes. All right, number 17, new business. We have agenda items A through AA. May I please get a motion? Mr. Cohn? Oh,
Question?
yes.
17R. I didn't see anything in our board packet in reference to this, so I was just wondering if somebody could address it and tell me what is the need for the pole vaulting consultant? And also, how will his responsibility differ from our very capable track coach's responsibilities?
That particular person is being hired as a coach through that company. So they are serving in the capacity as a coach side by side with the other coach. The other coach is a Mahwah employee.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, I think I still need a motion.
Yeah, need a motion.
Need a motion. Mr. Gallo, seconded by, someone put your hand up. Ms. Conoco.
Okay, roll call 17A through AA. Ms. Conoco.
Yes.
Dr. Park.
Yes.
Ms. Saccone.
Yes.
Mr. Copland.
Yes on all, but no on 17R.
Mr. De Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Denise.
Yes.
Mr. Gallo.
Yes.
And Mr. Kazmarski.
Yes. Number 18, new business personnel, resolutions A through Z. Can I please get a motion?
I don't have a question.
Yeah, once we get a motion. Then.
Motion.
All right, Mrs. Cohen for first, and second is Mr. Denise. Questions, comments?
Yes. So this is in reference to 18Z. Dennis, you explained the reason for the revision of the summer school principal, so I completely understand that. Thank you. I'm just wondering, for the school resource officer, what has been added or deleted from the prior job description?
So it was originally, we were using the school security officer job description, which was dated. So we updated it to reflect the actual job responsibilities of the SRO.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else with comments?
Real quick, there's without going over every single one of them here. Just congratulations to our retirees. I've known the Socio family since I'm a little boy, and it's great to see that she's got some time to herself. I think that's going to be it's just awesome. Wish Mr. Ulmer well. Congratulations to Dr. Bavino and Miss Ostano, and Miss Laura's back.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot here. So it's all good stuff.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Gallo, do you have something?
I'd also like to
Oh,
congratulate Beth Marin, an outstanding school counselor. And I'd also like to thank and congratulate Sue Kratchman. As Mr. Fair said, it was like having a second librarian at the Ridge. So she's also very conscientious and did a wonderful job all these years. So I'd like to wish them both well.
And I want to simply echo what Rick said, but I also want to point out item 18T, which is the formation of the culinary club at the high school. I see this as a foundation to moving the culinary arts forward in our district, and I have high hopes for its success. But I do want to wish Kevin Ulmer very much a lot of success. He is going to become the superintendent of the school district that I attended K through 8. I work in that district, not in the district itself, but in the town, and my mother still lives there. So I'll be making a visit and seeing how Kevin's doing, but I wish him all the best. And to our new director of curriculum and our new pre-K through 5 supervisor of special ed, welcome, thank you, and good luck. And Dr. Bavino, we will be talking about culinary arts.
I see it in my future.
Yes, you do.
I look forward to seeing that under curriculum very soon. as part of this
Mike's gonna
district.
make you apple crisp.
Yep, absolutely. On that note, I also would like to just congratulate everyone on their new positions. And as for the retirees, I wish them all well. Ms. DeSocio, I grew up on her street, so I've known her pretty much my entire life. And as a side note, it is the yard where I met Rick De Silva back in the early 80s. So, and here we are. But certainly wish them all well in their future endeavors. Mr. Copland.
Want to congratulate our 2 new administrators. Also want to congratulate Miss Marin on her retirement. My daughter has had her for the past 3 years, and on a daily basis, she may not know what kind of impact that she's had on the kids in that grade, but it's been huge. Especially, I can say that from a firsthand experience. She was there when my daughter needed her every time. So thank you for all you've done for the kids. Kevin Ulmer, I had the privilege of being in that school for 8 years. My daughter started kindergarten in his 2nd year as principal. What he's created at GW is something very special. We kid about it sometimes at the little schoolhouse in the woods, but my family was very fortunate to be in that building for the 8 years with Kevin. And I wish him nothing but the best. It's Mahwah's loss, but definitely Norwood's gain. So congratulations, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Any other remarks? Okay. Leaker.
Okay. Agenda items 18A through Z. Ms. Conoco,
Yes.
Dr. Park,
Yes.
Ms. Saccone,
Yes.
Mr. Copland,
Yes.
Mr. De Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Denise,
Yes.
Mr. Gallo,
Yes.
and Mr. Kazmarski.
Yes. All right, moving on to public questions or comments. Please get a motion to open the meeting to the public. Mr. Gallo, seconded by Mr. De Silva. All right, anyone wishing to speak, please come to the microphone, name, address, and why you're here. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Michelle Salzman, 10 Stonewall Court. I'm not sure of the format. Can I ask the question first and then read a statement?
Sure.
For the snacks,
Yeah, you,
sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
absolutely.
At the 6 through 12 level, what are the barriers to introducing a snack time, and what do we have to do to overcome those barriers?
I think the barrier is we're looking to see what time can be carved out and or what are reasonable ways to snack right at the 6 through 12 level. So it's something that we're currently speaking about with our building and leadership at Rampo Ridge and Mahwah High School.
Would that be considered a phase 3 item?
No,
It
That
would
is
be
not some-
prior to phase 3?
excuse me?
Would that be prior to phase 3,
That's
that
what we're-
introduction?
That's what we're working on, yes.
Okay. I have a child in the 7th grade and a child in the 10th grade, and it's been a bit of a struggle this year. I'm having them make it through those 5 to 6 hours without any solid nutrition.
Mhm.
So we do, use smoothies, but sometimes my daughter has 0 period. Sometimes there's things after school, and it's a long haul for them, for both of them. So if that is something that could be put to the top of the list, I would appreciate it.
We hear you.
And I just wanted to read a statement. This is from Melanie Sue. She was not able to come tonight. It says, "Good evening, Board of Education. This is Melanie Sue and Jay Sue of 13 Grenadier Drive." Do you need me to spell Grenadier?
No.
This is Melanie Sue, and I'm writing on behalf of my husband and myself. We are both healthcare professionals with backgrounds in pediatric emergency and specialized care. We have 3 children in 3 different Mahwah schools this year, 2 in the K through 5 level and 1 in the 6 through 12 grade level. We're addressing the board with regard to the topic of snack breaks for the 6th through 12th grade students. Please, please, please allow these children to incorporate 10-minute snack breaks into the school day. Many of these students board the school bus at 7 a.m. and return home around 1:30 p.m. The children in this age range are all in the beginning of or in full-blown pubescent stages of life. Hormone levels fluctuate rapidly. Frequent snacks and meals are necessary for them to concentrate. This applies to all children and not just those with underlying health issues. The snack break has been granted to the children in the K through 5 level, and we believe it's time to apply this across the board to all Mahwah students. This can be done safely, as you all know. There are too many parents leaving work early to pick up their children who would otherwise take the bus. They're picking them up simply because the kids say they are starving and can't wait to eat. We know you're working hard. Please know that so are the parents. This has been a challenging year for everyone. I left my job early this week for this reason. I'm currently working as a vaccinator. I have vaccinated countless teachers and school staff members and find myself racing home to prepare a meal for 3 ravenous children. This unnecessary race to pick up hungry kids can be eliminated and allow parents to finish their work, resulting in a less stressful environment for the parents and children, and ultimately have a positive impact on the school experience, which would be beneficial to everyone. I hope this minor schedule change can be made quickly, and we look forward to more and more normalcy as time goes on. Thank you to the board for hearing our concerns. Sincerely, Melanie and Jay Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That topic was also brought up at yesterday's Parent Advisory Council, so
Okay.
it's something that we are currently working on.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing?
How are you?
My name is Lou Theodoro, 1 Arenal Place. Firstly, to echo something that a lot of you said, Beth Marin, fantastic resource at school, did an incredible job for my son the last 3 years, and she will be missed. You guys have kind of been hammered about the snack thing, and it seems like you guys know you're on the right path, but I will tell you just anecdotally, snack is happening at 6 through 12. It's happening in the bathroom with a lot of people, and obviously that's not something we want. So I'm glad that you guys are getting on top of that. One other thing I've seen, and my daughter reported yesterday, is exercising outside during gym with masks on, even while you're socially distant. I looked at the CDC guidelines, and there's no guideline that states that masks need to be worn outside, especially during gym. It's dangerous for a child to be exercising vigorously with a mask on. It's hypoxia is possible. It's not going to happen with every child, but if you have that one child that has an issue, it could be a big issue, and just something I wanted to bring to your attention. Also, congratulations, Dr. Totoro, and thank you to all of you, Dr. Fitz, for a tough year, but a good year, and to the board as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you in person, finally. You can take your time. You're right.
Oh,
Haven't been wearing these a whole lot because I, work from home and, out. So Danessa Vojtovich, 68 West Airmount Road. I am also talking about snack. I had actually emailed Dr. Duturo and spoke to Mr. Corey at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, who spent like 15 minutes on the phone with me. So I'm very grateful for that. And I told him, please get off the phone with me and go enjoy your week. But I have to share with you that my daughter is in the 7th grade, 13 years old. She's not a huge eater to begin with. So in the mornings, I like fill her up with all this food. And Monday, it just tore my heart out. She came home in tears with a horrible headache because she could not eat in school. You know, I'll pack a granola bar in there for her and tell her to go eat in the bathroom, but like eating in the bathroom is kind of gross. You know, they have study hall. I'm, you know, kind of thinking, you know, is there just some way that they can sit there, you know, stick it under your mask if you have to, but, you know, give them the opportunity to eat. You know, it's heartbreaking as a parent to see your kid come home from school with such a, you know, I mean, tears, especially when school has been such a really positive thing for her. Phase 2 has been so positive. Both of my kids are so happy to be in school every day, which, you know, we were virtual last week and they kept saying to me, Mom, I can't wait to go back to school. That's also another thing. I understand getting the test and making sure that the children have quarantined sufficient amount of time. But we got negative test results midweek and they still had to wait till Monday. You know, I understand it's 7 days, et cetera, but I think there needs to be a little bit of leeway with that as well. And I'm happier that it's not 14 days, but, you know, they could have gone into school maybe Thursday or Friday of the week versus having to wait until Monday. So just a couple of things I thought I'd bring to your attention. Thank you all very much for all the hard work you're doing, because we came to Mahwah about a year ago from the Catholic schools. And I have to say, it's been a really wonderful experience so far with the teachers, the administrators, everyone has been wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Michelle?
Hi, Michelle Crocaz, 24 Island Road, Mahwah. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to Mrs. Marin for her wonderful job with my current 11th grader and who's remote, and my in-person 8th grader. And I also have a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old who are successful graduates of the Mahwah school system. So yes, she is 25 years old, she is. But anyway, my remarks are related to the current policy of no snack or beverage during the phase 2 portion of the school day for 6th to 12th graders. I just wanted to say, first and foremost, that whatever arrangements families make for their children because of medical situations, et cetera, I understand that they're between the family and the school. I also understand and respect the fact that privacy is the utmost concern, and whatever accommodations are made are nobody's business. But that being said, there are more variables that could arise with the advent of warmer weather. If kids are outside, students might need to drink more, especially if they're doing gym outdoors. They might get hungry, and it's still phase 2. So I respectfully ask that administration and the middle high school staff have a meaningful conversation to discuss setting aside a few minutes during the school day for hydration and a quick snack. I also ask that an update be provided via the One Call Now email system. Thank you, Dr. Fitz, for your emails. They're awesome. I read them. And I just ask that an email be sent out so families do understand where the process is. And then finally, I just look forward to seeing what the board comes up with as a solution that will benefit as many students as possible. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right.
Hi, everybody. Christine Moranti for Ivy Lane. Thank you for all your service and diligence. I've said at the Parent Advisory Council yesterday, it's mind-blowing, the threads that you have to consider and the moving targets and all of the factors and all of the imagined and perceived scenarios every time one little thing is adjusted. I have a couple of questions. My first question is about curriculum and how teaching is going right now. With so far at this point in the year, the majority of the education has been remote. We had like 25 days of in-person school for Spirit cohort, and then we were able to come back. When the children are in person in school, it really appears that, and my reports from my one child who's left in the districts, oh, I wore a Bosco shirt, I'm sorry, 7th grade. And I'm getting reports that their children are in school, but they're still on their computers and they're watching screen sharing. And there's really not a lot of interaction, engagement with hands-on activities. Like, so I just wanted to understand better, like, are we able to do more things that we used to do in the classroom now that we have an understanding from the CDC that the coronavirus doesn't necessarily live on surfaces anymore? You know, there's been a mandate of no paper going back and forth. Some of those projects were using a lot of different senses in education. Not every child learns best by just reading and looking at a computer. A lot of children learn well by using their hands, using their senses, using visual, being able to go out into the world and bring other things in, not necessarily come back and put it in a PowerPoint presentation. We had one science project come home during the whole remote learning period. It was a really cool potato project, and I really applaud Ms. Matteo for that. It was really cool. But that's kind of it. So where are we at with that, with this whole situation? And can we start to, can we just start to get back to some of those multisensory educational experience and more hands-on experiences?
So along the lines of education, obviously that's something that varies depending on grade level. So I can speak to the elementary, I can speak to the middle. Are you mostly 6 through 8, 6 to 12? Is
Yeah,
that the
6
question?
to 8 seems to be the hardest. I mean, the elementary level probably has a lot more manipulatives and things like that. They're doing a little bit more on paper, but we don't, just all I see right now is just more and more screen time, more and more screen time. So I'm just kind of, can we alleviate that? Like, what is our approach to that? Is there a mandate that says no paper or nothing?
There's no mandate. So I think that what the most appropriate way to handle that is, that's something that's specific to the teachers that are teaching those classes. Various teachers use various teaching techniques. The part about the screens, you're absolutely right. Something that we were proud of and still proud of since September is the access of the students who are home, having live access to the teachers on a day-to-day basis. Some districts, when you're remote, you get asynchronous instruction, and that's all there is. So there are teachers that challenge is straddling that line of, I need to support my students who are home. I need to support my students who are here. That's an ongoing conversation between supervisors and teachers of how do we engage in purposeful dialogue that allows the two students who are in school to feel valued and the students who are home to feel valued. As it pertains to instructional materials, that's definitely something that we can speak to the supervisors and teachers about of what materials they're using this year. I know they're using a lot of different platforms and educational experiences, but the tangible materials, I'd have to get back to you. I don't want to misspeak and tell you they're doing one thing and then not. But I have to tell you, it's definitely something that the teachers are constantly looking for ways to continue to develop themselves as teachers. They've done an excellent job of trying to figure this all out this year, and the product really speaks for itself. But I understand exactly what you're saying along the lines of, prior to pandemic, what were some things that we were able to kind of put our hands on and manipulate and things like that. So I'd have to go back and find out exactly programmatically what resources they're using specific to those classes. But it's a constant focus along the lines of instructional strategies at any level, K through 12.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Turo. If I may, I have a second question about traffic. Thank you for the opportunity to have an expert again review the traffic light. There's an accident in front of the high school this week. Was it at that light or this morning?
I'm not aware.
So I overheard a report that there was an accident that was causing some trouble, but my personal experience with the pickup at the Ridge is really miserable. My daughter's afraid to walk down the sidewalk and cross in front of the library. The line nowadays to pick up at the Ridge extends almost at the high school. So it passes the library driveway, it passes the little street, Jackson, I think is the name of it, or Johnson. Then it passes the JK, and it's and then it's almost at the high school. So if you're not there by like 12:10, 12:15, you're really at the back of the line. So what happens is you have the library driveway space. We're lined up to pass the driveway and pick up, right, as cars are moving up. And you have cars coming out of the driveway, the library driveway, turning right, going around a line of cars parked and waiting, going left, going around 2 rows of cars, the parked cars and the cars passing on the left. So left turn is passing 2 lanes this way and waiting for 1 lane that way. Then you have the cars that are going into the library from straight on, making a left, and from this around, both going around 2 lines of cars, while you have high school students going this way, Ridge students coming this way. And it's really a very frightening situation, and it's getting worse now that we are in phase 2. Like, the only downside of phase 2 is so while this person is here, can we look at the rest of the Ridge Avenue? Can we at least look at that? Can we have someone there? Can we work with the librarian to maybe get a little more supervision of that intersection? Not even to mention, when you go in the library and pick up as an alternative, very few people stop at the red light that they put on the bump. People are pulling over to the left and picking up on the sidewalk. People are parking, picking up in the spots. They're picking up in the back. It's really a mess with the lack of faith in taking buses or more people driving. The whole situation needs some attention. And I would appreciate that very much. Thank
So
you.
Nancy, one suggestion, I picked up my daughter for the first time at the Ridge in a while, and I saw what you saw. If you go further south down Ridge and just go past the Lenape driveway, that little alcove, that little the road kind of widens there.
Oh, yeah, by the tennis courts, right?
Yeah, well, further down, yeah, that
Okay.
little right there. I was one of 3 cars there. If people start parking there and having their children walk up that way, we may be able to help that traffic area down by the library. Not a lot of cars are parking there to pick up their kids. I was literally, like I said, one of maybe 3.
Maybe that will alleviate some at the other end. Thank you.
Not anymore. Thank you so much. Yeah. Should have kept that to yourself, Brett. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions, comments? Okay.
Michelle Salzman, 10 Stonewall Court. I just want to piggyback off what Christine said about pickup. I actually have 3 pickups. I go from Mahwah High School to Round Hill Ridge to Betsy Ross. So I am at the high school at 12 and I pull in my driveway at 1:35 every single day. And part of the reason that I have to do that is because they're not eating. I can't bus them because they can't make it. And I also can't go from the high school and then sit at the Ridge because that adds an extra 40 minutes. So unless I bring food in the car for my oldest, I can't go to the Ridge because she's too hungry. So I'm just saying that the lack of food and then the longer bus ride is kind of compounding the problem because, I mean, yes, I could do that. I just don't want to be cruel to them. So I kind of go from the high school home, back to the Ridge home, and then to Betsy. And it's a long, involved process. The line at the Ridge is very bad. Thank you for the tip, Brett. It's long, and walking across that library entrance is very dangerous. I've told my daughter not to walk across there, to wait up by the pole, and eventually the cars do move up. But it's really bad. The line is extremely long. So, and the high school isn't so bad, but when you pull out, it's just dangerous because of that curve there. You can't see if people are coming. So I don't know if there's anything to creep down, but I guess less people are busing now and more people are picking up.
Yep.
So just want to share my experience.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. All right. Oh, all right. One more.
Christine Moranti for Ivy Lane. I noticed in a lot of different places in the world, the opportunity to do things different with COVID is becoming a lower standard. And I'd like to applaud the efforts so far that we have for not accepting those things as a lower standard, but also to ask us to constantly be vigilant of that. For example, we had the Junior Honor Society induction ceremony at the Ridge. It was lovely and it was Zoom, but I'm here today looking at this room. It certainly could have been done in person. The children had a really lackluster experience. It was just a reading of a list of names. Ms. Parker gave a lovely speech, but it could have been done really nicely here. And could we think, not start accepting those things as an easy out? And I'm sure there's really not that approach here, but if we could just be vigilant about that, there's a lot of innovative minds here. But I do see in a lot of areas in the world where we don't have to do what we used to do anymore because we got so used to doing it by Zoom, or we got so used to doing this. So thank you for having the Board of Education meeting in person. And I appreciate that we could always have that in the back of our mind, that we don't drop our standards as being one of the best districts and start accepting things like that permanently. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Oh. One more.
Hi, Chris Salzman, 10 Stonewall Court. My comment's more related to Jim. So my wife mentioned that we have 4 kids in the school system, specifically my 7th grader. So she basically goes to gym every day just to either stand around, can't really talk with her friends, can't really do anything. No equipment can be used. It's basically a waste of time. Most of the time now that it's getting warm outside, they can go outside, still have to wear the masks, have to distance. Is there any opportunities to, as the other gentleman was mentioning, not have the masks outside when they're exercising, again, with the physical activity? Also, can they use some of the equipment, basketballs, volleyballs, soccer, just things that they can do to actually have gym, walking around? It's kind of, the story she tells me kind of reminds me of the movies where you see people walking around a prison yard. So we don't want to convey that more than we have to for public school or for any school that in general. So just wanted to kind of request that of the board. If something can be done just for the physical activity, actually making some of it more than just walking around. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, please get a motion to close, members of the public. Mr. Gallo, seconded by Mr. Coughlin. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to recess to executive session for matters of personnel matters, confidential student matters, negotiations. Mr. Capone, seconded by Mr. Gallo. Members of the public, we're going to go in executive closed session now for about 15 minutes. When we come out, we will not be taking any action on anything we discussed, and we will adjourn the meeting. So you're free to go home, and we thank you for coming.